24 degrees, almost convertible weather. Wintertime is a really good time to do modifications on your car. A lot of people have the cars actually stored in the garage for the winter. So yeah, project time. I daily drive mine through the snowstorms. I actually drove home through a blizzard last night in the Miata, just fine. Nice. But I am very excited for today's project because it's about time this thing got more bass. Now you're probably like, Jordan, why is the Miata outside? Don't you have a garage? Well, yes, the garage has been taken up by the Jeep. And yesterday, this was my project, taking up the whole garage. Me and Timon ripped out the dash, put in a super sweet Atoto wireless CarPlay and Android Auto head unit, which did wonders for, user experience, quote unquote, modernizing it, but also improving the sound quality. Now the Jeep, just like the Miata, the ethos is incremental upgrades, so I can see every single piece of improvement piece by piece. And that will be its own video on Flywheel Films later, just a review of that head unit and reverse camera whenever I get that installed. But yes, 3.5 years ago, I did a head unit in the Miata, which was fantastic. Big quality of life improvement, and I'm excited to have the Atoto on the Jeep now. So now the Jeep has a better head unit than the Miata. So maybe pretty soon here I'll upgrade the Miata head unit as well, because it'd be awesome to get a Atoto in everything. Because I've been really impressed with the one in the Jeep. Again, a video will be coming on that soon. But today's Atoto project is actually a subwoofer. That's right, this tiny little thing is getting a sub. So part of the reason it's been 3.5 years since the last audio upgrade was because that head unit made such a big difference in sound quality. This has the premium Bose stereo system, which is fine. It's mid-2000s Bose technology in a car, so that's not like super impressive. But the head unit itself actually did make a noticeable improvement on the sound quality. Now the same thing just happened in the Jeep, so I'm like, wow, there is something really genuinely real about that. The factory whatever processor that does the sound is pretty terrible. So many people actually do jump into replacing all the speakers in the Miata. I'm not there yet. I still am really pretty impressed with the Bose system, and I don't even know if all Bose systems are made equally. Like my first NC Miata, the Bose was not as good as this one, which is interesting. That was an NC1, so I don't know if they made subtle improvements between those years. So a lot of people do replace the speakers, which usually involves other amplifiers, doing a Bose-sectomy as they call it, ripping out all the Bose and amp, because the Bose amp and speakers are a special pairing. They require very specific resistance or ohms between the speaker and the amp. So I'm retaining that system, but I am adding a subwoofer, like I said, and there's a few different routes I could have taken. There are people who put subs in the trunk. That's a very obvious place. However, you don't necessarily get quite as much oomph in the cabin, obviously, because the sub is in a completely different part of the car, completely sealed off from the cabin. So it's not like throwing it in the sub of a SUV, for example, like these 4Runners. So the sub could go in the trunk. That would be an improvement. I think anything is an improvement over having no sub. Another option, that's locked. Another option is that some people put it in the passenger footwell. Now that could be a solution, but then you would be impeding on the actual passenger footwell space. That is still something I considered fairly heavily, because this thing's just like frozen shut. Oh geez. Because the passenger footwell is rarely used. I don't have passengers that often here. So I did think about making like a custom sub enclosure box down there, although I'm not that great at fabrication, so I don't know exactly how I'd have that done. And then just having like a quick release situation, so I could just remove the sub if I did have a passenger. That's definitely an option. Or if you don't have this retractable hardtop, there are actually cubbies behind the seats, 2 cubbies, 1 each. So I've heard people put in like dual mini subs, like 6.5-inch driver subs, which still have bass. Like that's small, but actually most people don't realize most soundbar systems, like for your home theater, have subs that are about 6.5 inches. Not all of them, but you know, a big chunk. So that was another consideration if you have a soft top. So granted, that's not mine at all. My dream setup really was like having a dedicated amp powering a sub that could be either in the passenger footwell or in the trunk, and I could pick and choose which one I want. Maybe the trunk one's more powerful, but if I want to use the trunk, then I remove that sub. Like, that would be really cool, kind of a pipe dream. But I really wanted the path of least resistance, and all those things would be insanely challenging projects to undertake. Not impossible, not worth it, but I was thrilled that Atoto reached out, because they have a solution that I think will work perfectly. And that's the final option, which is a behind or under seat sub. And that's where this comes in. So let's jump to a sunnier day and unbox this thing. Should be fairly straightforward as far as I know, but this is the box. It's actually decently heavy because it is a subwoofer. It's a speaker. Speakers have magnets. They are heavy. First things first, some cables. Yep, we'll need those. Some mounting situations. Ooh, the sub, min, and max dial. Gonna need that. Looks like it actually connects over some sort of cat cable, which is really cool. So you could actually use any off-the-shelf like phone jack cable to control that. That's pretty sweet, actually. No proprietary cable needed there. And some mounting situations, which I will look into, of course. Instruction manual. I recommend holding on to that. I'm assuming they have the instruction manual online as well, but can't hurt to have it. And here is the sub. Oh my gosh, it's so nice and slim. So that's pretty easy with the box. And this is always the most fun thing. Huge fuse right there. And here it is in all of its glory. Slim design. Yeah, so here's the driver on the front. A Atoto badge very clearly placed in the bottom. Nice big driver. This should work beautifully, honestly. I'm really excited about this. On the bottom or top, I don't know how you, yeah, I guess bottom because the logo's right there. You have some controls. So we have EBC remote. Not sure what EBC stands for. Phase. You can even do phase control, 0 degrees and 180 degrees. That's to allow you to perfectly match basically the peaks and valleys of the speakers that are elsewhere in your car. So you don't have your sub frequencies blending or bouncing off each other too much. And then there are controls for the low pass, crossover, bass boost, gain. Of course, there's your remote input and the power cable. And then input, channel 1, channel 2, so left-right situation with RCA cables. And the fuse itself, 20 amp fuse it looks like. So nice and beefy fuse. This is going to be sweet. So as you can tell, it's pretty straightforward. The unboxing, very simple for these types of products. And yes, it does fit perfectly behind my seat with my seating position. That would mean someone taller than me, I'm 6 foot by the way, would not really be able to drive the Miata, or they'd be uncomfortable because they can't move the seat all the way back. But I might also think about the passenger side. So what I'm gonna do is wire up the subwoofer. That's gonna be a fun experiment because I've never done that before. Get it all wired up and actually run the line from the head unit through the center console, coming out the back, just like I did with my USB ports. That way I could actually change it between the passenger or driver seat depending on, you know, what I might want to do. So I'm gonna try this out. This will be a fun experiment, and I'm just super excited to add a little bit of oomph to this car. So again, I've really been enjoying this car for the last 60,000 miles of having just the current setup, which was just a head unit, improving the sound quality of the Bose that it came with. But I'm so excited to give a little bit more bass because adding a subwoofer actually takes away the effort that the other bigger drivers, like the 8-inch drivers in the doors, I think they're 8-inch, they're huge. Those have to work less hard on producing bass frequencies so they can focus on the clarity of the mids and the highs, which I think they're pretty good at. So adding bass will just make everything better, in theory. So here's the plan. Normally I would try to have the top down, but actually operating the power retractable hardtop in these cold conditions, especially with there's some ice back there, could damage it. So I will actually leave the top up for now. Maybe we'll put it down later if it warms up a bit. But yes, going to remove the center console. There's plenty of videos on that, including my own videos on how to replace, the head unit, shifter turret, all that stuff, these little things. So that's easy enough. So we'll do that, and then we'll get to the back of the head unit. And the only reason we need to do that is so we can access the subwoofer output, which is on the back of this, and the amp turn-on wire. That is how the sub knows to actually turn itself on, because the sub has its own amp inside of it. So the sub will be hardwired to the actual battery itself, I believe, and then we will be able to, run the amp turn-on wire to the sub, which will tell the sub, hey, it's okay to turn on now. The car's on. You don't have to stay quiet. But I was just sitting down right there, and behind the seat, if you can see, is the sub. Look at that. Super perfect snug fit right behind my exact driving position. I don't even know if I'll have to fasten it down. I might try just in case, but if the seat really holds it in place, that works great for me, because that also gives me the option to remove the sub if I ever need to or want to, or move it to the other side. Like maybe I'll have a taller driver, so just swap the sub over to the other side. I'm excited about the options with this thing. Being so slim means there's a lot of different places you can put it. And if I ever decide to, I could even throw it in the trunk, because the trunk has that cubby at the bottom, which would also fit the sub. So lots of options with that. Let's get that center console ripped out. So after doing some preliminary looking under the hood and talking to my dear friend Mike at Fly Miata, who is also under his hood at this moment, we concluded I think I'm going to try to pull the wire through this main wiring grommet right down there, run it along this thing up by the fuse box. That's when a different wire comes out and then runs up along this thing, and then literally right here by the battery where it needs to go. Some people might try to run their amp wires or sub wires to something in the car, but with something that pulls at peak 400 watts, I don't want to cut any corners. I'm going to go straight to the main source of power. And here's the red wire. Should be long enough, I think. Unfortunately, it is red wire, so I can always get more. You definitely don't want to jip on the gauge of the wire for sure. So timer showed up, big guns. I've been using a hammer in my engine bay, feeling like Jeremy Clarkson a bit. That grommet is super thick, but I think we're making progress with finding a way through it. Basically used the screwdriver.
All right, stick the screwdriver through.
Okay, as a drill. Freaking mission success. So we put the screwdriver through the grommet and then tried to tape this to it. It didn't work, but we pulled the screwdriver out, put a different flathead screwdriver from the bottom side, pushed it through with this tape to the screwdriver. So that all worked. Now I can pull this through carefully. Fortunately, because the hole was big enough for the top, it's definitely big enough for the wire, but still is tight enough to feel like there's an actual seal, more or less. So going to pull this through, route it properly along here. That will go to the battery itself, and then the rest of the cables will be able to be routed through that center console. I have run the red wire all the way through, zip tied it up behind here. This plastic piece can be pulled off really easily, so it's zip tied all along the rail there. And yeah, feels nice and secure out of the way. I won't have to worry about kicking it at all. Run it up through here, and it's just down here. Now on the other side, I haven't zip tied it down yet. Just wanted to make sure I had enough wire to reach, and it's just barely long enough. It comes up along here, right along there, right along here, which is where it'll tie into the battery itself. I do also obviously recommend disconnecting the battery, negative terminal first, then positive. And this will be routed to the positive. And it should fit on that screw perfectly, actually. So that's all said and done. Before I fully zip tie it down, I am going to test it. So next up should be locating, I think, a ground, which actually I can use, I think, basically any of these bolts in here. Actually, there's a ground right there, literally perfect. So I'll ground it to that. And then just got to run the amp turn on cable up there, get it connected into the head unit, and we are golden. It's really not that hard. The hardest part is just figuring out, in my case, figuring out how to get through the firewall to connect to the battery. If I was trying to route it to the trunk for, say, a longer car, you'd probably need either the battery connection in the trunk or a longer red cable. This red cable will not probably span the length of a car bigger than this if you are going for a trunk setup for the subwoofer, just FYI. All right, we're almost ready to connect the amp turn on wire to the amp turn on wires. There's a lot of amp turn on wires back there. I got all the wires wired through here. Don't mind me, I just cut myself. That's the ground.
It's not emo.
Yeah, that's the ground. And those are all the wires that will go to the actual sub, which is behind the seat, which you can't even tell, which is awesome.
I can feel it though.
You feel it?
Yeah.
Wait till it turns on, then you definitely feel it. So, and then I got the sub wire plugged into the back of the head unit right there. So we're almost
Let's
ready.
do it.
Heck yes. There goes Timon. Appreciate his help as always. We didn't screw it up. Subwoofer works. So I'm gonna get this controller wired up as well. But everything works absolutely perfectly. First try. Love to see it. Love to hear it. It's really hard to like showcase what it sounds like over the phone. The phone microphones just cannot capture how it sounds, but man, it adds a really nice amount of bass, especially literally attached to the driver's seat, like right behind the driver's seat. So nice and thumpy. It's almost like those 4D sound systems, the 4D theaters, where the subs are in your seats. And actually, new Mercedes and BMW has that. So I'm bringing this car up an echelon tier. Here's the sub behind the seat before I'm laying it sideways, just so I can show you. You have to have the EBC button up, I guess. And phase, I have it set to 0, or actually I have it set to 180. You can control up to 0 and 180. Sometimes the head unit lets you do that as well. The remote connection, and there's also crossover, bass boost, gain. All that I have set to just default because I can actually adjust all that on the head unit itself. Then you have the input, then you have the main harness, which has all the power and amp turn on signal and ground and everything. These are kind of optional connectors because if you don't have a sub out on your head unit, you can actually connect the sub that way, just by taking left and right signals from the actual speakers. And then that's a way to kind of tell it what the signal is. It's better to use the sub output because that'll give you the actual low frequencies exclusively, but it's nice to know you have that option as well. So everything's good. I know it looks like a little chaotic right now, but I'm gonna clean it all up, put it all back together, and then you'll be floored at how you won't even know it's there until you're sitting and listening to some beats. Voila, super clean. You can see the red wire running along that side, but otherwise tucked in nicely, goes right there. It has to go kind of in the front of the battery because of the cover. It's like a really tight seal around the edges, but honestly, I think it looks super nice. And in the interior, literally, you would have no idea. This is my normal seating position. It's just that a sub fits behind it. So imagine how much time I was wasting having that empty space behind my seat. Actually, behind the passenger seat, there's also some space, but I usually use it for like car cleaning supplies, you know, detail spray and microfiber cloths, etc. Even reusable shopping bags. Out here in Colorado, we get charged for shopping bags, so that's a solution there. Last thing I'm gonna do is that little thing is hanging right now. I'm gonna kind of adhere it to the top and just see if I like the position before I permanently screw it in. But man, it really came together nicely. This car needs a wash. It finally got warm enough to drop the top, which helped me install the center console. I actually did forget to put the screws in the side of the head unit, but it's so tightly held in there, I'm just gonna gloss over that for now. I can add those in later if I ever decide to, but it's so much work to pull it out. I don't want to redo that. And the screws really were just there to, I don't know, they held in the factory head unit. This one is held in so many places that it feels super solid. So we are just about ready to go blast. I'm gonna go take it to the Super Bowl party. Today is Super Bowl Sunday, so I'm gonna test the sub out with seeing how it works, top down and everything. Should be a good old time, but super thrilled for that. So I'm gonna get dialed in. and then give you guys final thoughts once it's all dialed in. I'll actually give you my like recommendations on how to set up the sound system to sound properly. But look at that cockpit. It's all coming together. And we're off. So I think I've gotten it dialed in pretty well. Just cruising around my neighborhood. Nice lower speeds. You can maybe tell what I've done. Now it's really hard to like get this feedback off through the camera. It's a sound system. Like even when I review real cars, like, well, this is a real car too, but even when I review other cars' sound systems, it's hard to elaborate to the viewer how it sounds because you're not here, especially a subwoofer, because you can't feel it. But let me try to explain, and maybe you can get something through this. I don't know how the audio is going to go through. But I think I've gotten it dialed in. Now I have tried the sub actually behind both seats, and it works either way, but I've opted to keep it behind the driver's seat. Now, it does impede on legroom if you're taller than me. It's perfect for my driving position. So I'm 6 foot tall. Of course, your legs / torso may vary, but I can't have anyone taller than me drive my car right now because of where the sub is, but that's fine. I'm the one driving the car 99% of the time anyways. So the other thing is because I probably like more bass than most people. So if I have it dialed into how I enjoy it, then the passenger will also enjoy it. They just won't feel it quite as much as me. Because I can feel it. It's like a 4D experience. Like I said before, it's in my seat. It's awesome. So the settings, I can show you on the screen actually a bit later. It's just a bit bright right now. But I have with the head unit, the low pass filter set at about 60, the high pass filter set about 50. Your stereo may vary quite a bit, but honestly, that's expected. I have the premium Bose speakers. They're bigger drivers on the doors. They can carry more bass. And then this sub can actually go higher than, of course, 60 hertz, but I have it cut off to that because I didn't want overwhelming amounts of like thud. Like this just handles like the lowest stuff, which is really nice. Just feels great in my butt / back. It's like heated seat, and now I have a thumping seat. So the sub settings on the sub itself, I just left out of the box, and I have the crossover and stuff set on the head unit. I have the EQ kind of dialed in, and I have the sub level set fairly low because I can actually adjust things on this knob over here. The input gain knob, which I have routed over to my left knee area in that little cubby that I never knew what to use it for. Now I kind of have a purpose. It's perfect. I can adjust the gain on the fly, which I actually like. Some people might be like, oh, I just want to set it and forget it. That's fine. But every song and artist handles bass differently, and I just like to be able to like give it a little nudge up or down depending on the song or the artist. So I'm definitely hoping to get an Atoto head unit at some point. This one's great. I do have it dialed in pretty well, but it's not wireless CarPlay, and it doesn't have quite as much customization as the Atoto head unit I have put in the Jeep. Videos on that are, of course, coming. But for what I have right now, this does work great. And this head unit I have does have a sub out, which is for sure the best way to handle the sub frequencies. But my goal was to just have the bass blending in nicely, and I think I've achieved that goal. It feels great. Pun intended. It feels great, it sounds great, I just have it nicely blended. It's not like one of those like crazy thumping the neighbor's car. It's just there. It adds more presence to the music. I actually don't have to have the volume as high as before because the speakers are now, doing less low-end stuff, which helps them focus on the high-end stuff, which lets them put more power to the high end. So I can eventually add more amps, more speakers and stuff, but for what it is right now, it's phenomenal. I'm super thrilled with it. I will say I have found a few more rattles because the sub frequencies, the sub's like basically against the back wall of the car. So I think I will try to attack that with Dynamat at some point, or some sort of sound deadening material. Curious what you guys have used in that regard, but it's fine. I have the sub dialed in nicely. It's not super loud. I would crank it louder, but then I'd have more rattles, which is not the sub's fault. It's a Miata. This is not a Jaguar. Well, actually, that's maybe not a good option. This is not a Rolls Royce. There's going to be some rattles. The build quality is not that of a super high-end thing. It was never intended to have all these bass frequencies, but I'm thrilled that they're there. So, with that,
let's head back, get some final thoughts. I'm going to continue enjoying my music, as I always do now. Woo-hoo-hoo! Yeah! So it is bright, but let me show you really quick where the settings are at in this thing. Sound. So I have extra bass turned off. Sony systems do usually have extra bass, 1, 2 or off. I have that turned off because I can just tweak the bass how I want in the actual EQ. And the EQ is basically this. Now again, your system may vary, but I've actually have a lot of the lower stuff cut because I have, separate control of the sub. So I have it probably cranked a little bit on this thing down here. That's the where I ran the cable for the input gains adjustment, and I have the sub a little bit lower over here too. It's a very powerful sub, so you really don't need that much to make a difference in a car this small. Now if I had it actually routed to the trunk or something, I'd probably have it oomphed a bit more, but this is how I've had it before. And actually before the sub, I had the low end down even further in the EQ because these speakers aren't known for fantastic low end. So now that I have a sub handling the low end, I have them bumped a bit more, which just feels really good. This EQ really does feel like a nice curve. The highs are nice and clear. I do have to push them a little bit because Bose I don't think handles highs that well unless they get a little bit added, and Bose tends to be overly bassy. In my NC1 it was even more bassy than this. Now the annoying thing is that when the roof is closed and the latch is done, the sound changes, which I think is an amplifier thing because I have no control over that in the actual head unit, and it's really annoying. If anyone knows how to overcome that, that's an NC Miata thing. I'd love to just have it to where it always thinks the top is open. That'd be nice, because that's really how it sounds best. But everything is EQ'd nicely in there, and here's where I can show you kind of the crossover. 50 hertz for the high pass, 60 hertz for the low pass. In some cases you might want to up this, and I might even up it and just try 80 and 80. A lot of people say that's what they use. I've tried that, and it really kind of depends on the song. I just found that I just been pushing the most low frequencies to the sub, and then the phase I actually have on normal for both here and on the sub, and that sounded best. It really depends what sounds best to you. On the controller, I will say my one complaint is that light is so freaking bright. On one hand, it tells me that it is indeed on and working, which is nice. But I don't know if you can really tell on the camera just how bright that is at night. It like lights up the whole section of the cabin over here. So I don't know, you might like that. I'm not a fan. I will probably figure out a way to either completely block it or dim it heavily because it is somewhat distracting at night. Otherwise, this thing is properly dialed in. So that's it. That's the Atoto subwoofer, how to install it, how to run power to it, how I have my settings set. Again, yours may vary, but I think this works exceptionally well, and I am really thrilled it fits behind the driver's seat as well as it does. Like, it's perfect. Again, maybe it'll vary for you. Like if you're shorter, that space is going to be too big, in which case you'd probably have to like nestle something in with it or something, I don't know, or just mount it to the wall itself. That might be something I do in the long run. I may cut out the plastic behind there, mount the sub with the included mounting brackets to the actual metal wall. I have some rattles I need to find, and which are probably behind there as well. So more to come with that. Definitely stay tuned as I figure out more solutions with the sound in this car. I want to add some Dynamat, some soundproofing in the wall behind me, maybe in the floor, in the door especially. I'm enjoying getting the soundscape really tweaked in nicely and gradually. So this is the next huge step. I did the head unit a few years ago. Now I'm doing the sub, trying to do things better and faster. And yeah, let me know what you guys think of the subwoofer. Do you have a sub recommendation? Leave it down in the comments what you've done and what worked, maybe what didn't work. And I think I need to get an Atoto head unit as well, because wireless CarPlay is great in the Jeep, and this head unit's kind of old, so it'd be cool to get something more modern, a bit more high resolution, a bit brighter in the sunlight, because obviously. So yes, let me know what you guys think. Always good to see you, always fun to make videos. And oh, did you like the hat? Stay tuned for merch March. Is that a thing? All right, cheers.